Hi, this is Mrs. Kidman, and in this video, we are going to be discussing how we find the minimum and maximum values of a quadratic function. Now, these quadratic functions have these minimum and maximum values. Notice how the minimum value is when it's at the very bottom, and our maximum value is here at the very top. Well, guess what's an interesting thing about this? Our minimum and maximum are also called our vertex. Now, we determine whether it's a maximum or a minimum based on what our a is. So if a is less than 0, if a is negative, remember our quadratic is going to open down, kind of like a frowny face. And when it's negative, that means we have a maximum. Okay, it's going to be the highest point that we have. When a is greater than 0 or when a is positive, our quadratic is going to look kind of like a smiley face, and we have a minimum or a bottom point there. So the way that we figure out the maximum or minimum is we first look at that a value. If it's positive, it's going to be a minimum. If it's negative, it's going to be a maximum. And then all we have to do to find that minimum and maximum value is find our vertex. And remember, we've been practicing finding that vertex by finding our axis of symmetry and then substituting that x value back into our function to figure out what the y value is. So we're going to go over one example of determining whether or not something has a minimum or maximum value, and then finding that value. So remember, to decide if it's a minimum or a maximum, I want to look at this a term here. Now, is this a positive or negative number? That's right, this is negative. So when it's negative, remember, our function is going to look like a frowny face. So that means this has a point on here that's going to be at the very top, and that top value is called a maximum. So we have a maximum value here with this function. To find that value, remember our maximum is the same way, is another word for our vertex. So to find the value of our vertex, what we're going to do is we are going to find our vertex. And to do that, we start by looking at our axis of symmetry. So remember, our axis of symmetry is x equals negative b over 2a. In this case, our b is negative 24, so I have negative 24 over 2 times negative 4. Now, a negative times a negative is a positive, so I have 24 over negative 8, and that'll simplify to negative 3. So that means with my maximum, or my vertex, that value is going to be negative 3 comma something. The way we figure out what that number is we're just going to plug our x value back into our function. So I want to figure out what is f of negative 3. And as I substitute it in, we can see that our value is going to change here. So let's take a look at it. Negative 3 squared is 9. Negative 4 times negative 3 is going to be, or negative 4 times 9 is negative 36. Then we have this 23, this negative 24 times negative 3, and that's going to give us a positive 72, and then we have a minus 19. So as we combine these values together, we end up getting 17. So our maximum here is at negative 3, 17. And remember that maximum is just the same as our vertex. So again, if a is less than 0, if a is a negative number, we have a maximum, and that maximum is just our vertex. If a is a positive number, we have a minimum, and that minimum is just our vertex, and we're going to calculate that vertex the same way we have been. And that is how we find that maximum and minimum value of a quadratic.